I'm Cherry Lee Bloodworth Botop. I'm with the City of Fairhope, and I'm just welcoming everyone. You're going to hear tonight from Mayor Wilson and from Wayne Dias, our planning director, who's going to talk a little bit about where we are with the moratorium. I think the mayor's going to kick it off with some comments that she'd like to make to all of you. We did get some questions emailed, and those will be addressed. And I just want to say we're going to end right at 7, and I know this is a hot topic, so it could go on all night. And yes, we want to let people leave at 7. And yeah, if you have, I think there'll be a public period too, where you can come up and ask questions toward the end. And I'm a little sick, I'm sorry, I don't sound too good. Oh, she wants to spray the mic now.
Thank y'all so much for coming out and staying engaged. This is going to be so important, really, throughout the rest of the term. With y'all being right there with us as we, go through this transition and make the updates needed for our city to protect the way that we grow, it really will have to be citizen involved and supported. And we definitely want to hear from you. I feel like I couldn't have, I could have searched high and low, and I don't think I would have, found a better person than Wayne Dias. And it's D-Y-E-S-S, just saying, we did spell it wrong on the website. Anyway, but he has been in planning for 23 years, and he worked for Baldwin County and Walton County. Walton County is probably one of the stricter, places. We're 30A, but anyway, I want you to hear from him tonight because we are working together diligently, going through every resolution and going through everything as far as the application process, where I feel like there's always been a disconnect in planning because it's not a fun process right now, and planning is the key that really is not happening right now. We want there to be a plan before the application happens. We want for developers, individuals who want to build a home or a business, we want to start that conversation from the beginning, before money spent on engineering, before you spend money on architecture. These are expensive things, and you don't want to get to a planning meeting just to be told, well, you need to change this and you need to change that. That's just not a good relationship. So we're going to put things in place, and I'm going to let Wayne talk more about this, that the conversation happens at the beginning. We want you to know what the process is, how can we help you make that project better for the city, which will in turn bring more value to your development. But to me, it is, and it will also be community engaged, and that will be part of the process as well. I'm going to hand it over to Wayne, and I really want y'all to give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
I've been here about a month now, I guess. As the mayor stated, I worked for Baldwin County for 11 years. In the 2000s, also worked for Walton County, Florida, before I came back here. So I do have some background in Baldwin County and being around Fairhope. I actually grew up in South Baldwin, so I've seen the area develop and grow. But as the mayor mentioned, we are, during this moratorium stage, we are looking at our ordinances, trying to update the ordinances. There are some that are minor changes that are important, but there are some that are fairly impactful areas that we need to look at. We've been diligently going through the ordinance. We have, as a staff, identifying the needs. There are several areas from the planning standpoint, and the mayor mentioned this earlier, where we could do a better job as far as the community engagement. And that, as she mentioned, having the community involved or the neighborhood involved in the development process early on in the early stages of the development. One of the proposals we'll be making is having a required pre-application meeting with the staff before anything's filed, so we can go over what the requirements are with the developer or the applicant. But also, most importantly, is a required community meeting for the development with the surrounding property owners and those affected by the development before an application is filed. I think this does a number of things. First, it gets the community involved. It notifies them of what's going on, but also it's a chance for the applicant, the developer, to hear what the concerns are from the community. And if there's things that are design related that could be changed at that time, or some things they could do to mitigate the impact, that would be the absolute best time to do that prior to any kind of site plans being drawn. When you start doing that, it starts, there's money involved in that, and changing those are very difficult. So that's something that we're going to really try to do, put that in place. I think that'll had some concerns regarding that. As you know, each watershed has its own constraints. We have the gullies, and those are all kind of unique features to Fairhope, and we hope to tailor our regulations to try to meet those challenges. Development will occur. I think our whole goal is to make sure that when development does occur, it's done according to what the current laws are on the books, and also it's done consistently. Each person's treated the same each and every time. And that we address the concerns that we can address. And that's a primary goal of ours. But there's some small things we're working on. There's been a lot of comments we've had about the tree ordinance. We're trying to make that more effective, make the process clearer for everyone. I think when there's ambiguity in the process, it does create some tension because if I read it one way and it's very vague, the other person might read it a different way, and we don't have the same understanding. That also leads to additional problems. So we're looking to clarify, create clarity, create consistency, and create some probability in the process. And so you know what's going to be the result once it's finished. Additionally, we are looking at the comp plan. The comprehensive plan is a village-based comprehensive plan. In my reading in the past month, I've read a lot of information that we have in our office regarding some of the meetings that were had regarding that. Right now, we don't really have the method to implement that comprehensive plan, the village concept, effectively, in my opinion. So we will also be looking at our ordinances and our regulations to ensure that we can appropriately try to fulfill that vision of the comprehensive plan. That's very important, and if we do that, I think we'll be successful. I think having development at the right locations is key to this process. There are several areas that are already identified as village centers. Green Hill Road, 181, for example, Fairhope Avenue, 181. There's a lot of areas that have been identified based on those community meetings, and so we're looking at trying to tailor those regulations to implement that comprehensive plan. That's a fundamental process of planning is you have to have the appropriate ordinances to implement those long-range, long-term plans you have. Without the ordinances to do that, they're really not of much value to you. So we're also looking at that, and that's, all these we're talking about will have to be done through amendments to our zoning ordinance and our subdivision regulations, which is a public process. There'll be many opportunities for the public to get input on that. And so we are just at the very beginning stages of that process right now. It can be a long and tedious process, but we're committed to fulfilling that and to making sure it's done the appropriate way. Fairhope has a unique character. We want to make sure that we try to keep that character the way it is. We're going to have growth. I think that's something that we have to accept. But at the same time, have growth that we can be proud of, that's an asset to the community, and that fits into the community. And that's the key part about implementing the comprehensive plan. Making sure that the village centers are something that's mixed use, that's compatible with these surrounding neighborhoods. Another area we would like to see some beefing up in our ordinance is having some compatibility analysis done for rezonings, for example, to ensure that it's compatible with the adjoining properties. And that's another issue we'll be also addressing through compatibility standards. Also through buffering standards. Many times you can create compatibility through having a buffer, a landscape buffer, berms, those kind of things. So we've been quite busy. We're very excited about that. It's going to be a fun process. I think the result from that would be a very, very positive benefit and outcome, and something we can all be proud of. I've been doing this a long time, as the mayor mentioned. It's very important to me to ensure that we do a good job. It's great to see a crowd like this tonight because planning, I believe, begins with the community. It begins with the people in this room who are concerned and take interest in their community, and it's very good to see. I've been a few places in my career that people don't care about planning, and you can actually tell from the way their community looks. It's obvious to me that Fairhope is and has always taken pride in how their community develops and how it looks. And so it's very exciting for me to be a part of something like that. And the mayor has a definite vision of how she wants this process to flow, and we are doing our best to implement that vision that she has for this. But you'll be seeing more of us in the future with meetings and proposing these ordinances. Drafting an ordinance, it's not as easy as it may sound. It takes a lot of review, and I'm a believer in research and not reinventing the wheel. So I always look to places that things have worked better and try to emulate and borrow their information. A lot of things that we're doing here, I've actually borrowed it from Walton County because it worked fairly well there. Not to say that nothing will be easy, because planning is always difficult and there's always contention, but we're going to do our best to make sure that it is done in a professional way, a consistent way, and something we can be proud of. And Mayor, I guess from that's kind of the basis of where we're going from and kind of how I see the department moving forward. And I guess at this time, Mayor, if it's appropriate.
I just wanted to mention that I don't know if you are as excited as me listening to him speak, but I mean, this is and really in an important poll that I did before I even decided to run. I wanted to make sure that the citizens that what your concern was in line with what my concern was, and the absolute number one, in fact, the number two as well, because people checked it as number one and number two, that the way we grow is the most important thing in Fairhope. You absolutely, and it was like 74%, so it is our main focus. We're going to keep our eye on the prize. You really have to have that end goal. And everything that we do will be because of that. And it really will help us with all of our concerns. When you do things with a plan and you do it intentionally instead of reactively, it fixes overcrowded schools because you're going to have more funding. It creates more, successful entrepreneurs because people want to live here. They want to shop here. There's so much to this. I honestly, I can't sleep at night because my, wheels are always spinning, and I'm so excited about the possibilities and the opportunities Fairhope has right now. And right now, I just want to give people the opportunity to ask questions about the moratorium, growth, and because there is obviously a lot to this. I mean, a lot of details, but I did want you to meet Wayne and hopefully get as excited as I am. So, and you could, we can probably hear you. You don't have to come to the mic unless you want to. Yes, sir. Oh.
Sure.
Yes. It's actually, we did hear that. Yep. I am. I don't even know that I need a mic. Well, okay. I'll get it up. But yeah, somebody emailed me before the meeting and said to stand, and I did forget to stand. So thank you. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. Oh.
Hi.
I'll just stand here.
Hey, Pete Shakrowski here. I have property across the Can you hear me now? I feel like I'm on Verizon now. Okay. Pete Shakrowski, landholder across from the Arts Center. I have a vacant lot that we're working with a developer to do. And I definitely appreciate your concept on revising site plan approval, because in going through the process previously, we have cost in excess of, well, we have architectural fees that will go once the thing is approved, but we don't have to hire a civil engineer anymore because he's already done everything. And we had the developer that I'm working with had put that cost, was out of his pocket and out of my pocket. First question is, if something is approved currently under site plan, and where are we going to stand on that process? If something's already pre-approved.
If something's already pre-approved site plan before the moratorium?
Correct. For downtown Fairhope within the CBD.
Right. If that site plan was approved prior to the moratorium does not affect that site plan. It's basically vested to continue through the process.
Okay.
Moratorium was for new applications that came in after the moratorium.
Okay, sounds good. That was my big question. But I do applaud your ideas on changing the current site planning process, because I think it is for somebody who wants to invest in downtown or whatever, it is a tremendous burden to hire engineers and so forth
No
to
question.
do something before it is even, it's on the boards.
It
per se.
really is an
So-
awful situation right now.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, but thank you so much.
Thank you. And we want to say, too, that even though and this is an amazing statistic, but we have, even with the moratorium in place, if we did not approve one more application right now, we would have development for 4 years. So, we have a tiny little breather right now, but do know with our new planning director and that whole department, even things that have already been approved, everything will be by the book. Nobody's going to be treated any differently than someone else. It's going to be very fair. And honestly, I don't think there's just going to be a lot of what ifs. And, by the time you get to the Planning Commission, not everything should hinge on that, planning meeting. You want to know where you are. That should be more of a formality, not a, God, if this doesn't go through, I've got this that I've got to pay for. I mean, that's a ridiculous situation to put the citizens in. And so I can't tell you enough how I feel like this is going to transform the way we grow. So, does anybody else have a?
Hi, it's George Wilson with Fairfield Police. We met recently, as you know. My concern is always for the impact that the growth, and we know it's going to grow, that the impact on the growth that's going to happen on the people that are already here, specifically watershed. And I know it's a big one. We've heard that you have a plan in place to bring developers up. I saw the planning meeting. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, but I did see the planning meeting from yesterday. We had a concern when we were talking about the Magnolia Medical Center that's up on County Road 44 and Twin Beach, which is next door to us. At the end of the presentation, Wayne, and this is not a complaint, it's a question, okay? At the end of the presentation, the chairman said, is there anybody here that has any questions? And unfortunately, nobody was there. It was a public meeting. Had I known about that, somebody would have been there asking questions about the water runoff. Two parts of that then. Number one, how do we find out what's being planned as residents now, not as developers and contractors? And number two, is there anything being planned where we can get together? Your ideas of bringing the community in are fantastic. What's being planned to get our voices heard?
I can take the second part.
Sure. Yeah, as far as the drainage for the medical park, I know we had discussed that. The way that works is we have drainage standards in our zoning ordinance and our subdivision regulations. Those are reviewed by our third-party engineer and to make sure they're being applied appropriately. If they meet those standards, then they move through the process. In that particular case, they did meet the standards. I know I think we had one or two looks at it from our engineer, and it did meet the standards. I know there's a concern downstream from the water, but it did meet those standards in that case. Now, going forward, one of the things we want to look at is reviewing those standards to make sure that it's appropriate in each location based on watershed. And that's one of the things that we've talked about is updating those drainage standards to make sure that one size doesn't always fit all. And if there's some certain concerns we have in certain watersheds, we can put the appropriate measures in place to make sure that's addressed. But that development did meet all the standards we had on the books today.
Understood, and maybe I wasn't clear. My question was, how do I know what's being reviewed at the planning meeting so that we can address it at the planning meeting, or preferably before it gets to the planning meeting?
We do publish agendas. Those agendas are published in the newspaper, and there's advertisement requirements for each development that goes in the newspaper. There are notices to adjoining property owners that are required. But further than that, I think that's a good question, a good point. We may want to evaluate putting the agendas out on some sort of email blast or something like that to where people can sign up and be notified. That's something that I've seen in the past.
What we're going to do even before that, like this is going to be a process. We walk out of here and this all sounds great, but there will be a process to get to that point. But we don't want you to rely on a meeting to make all the decisions. It's not going to happen anymore once we have this in place. You're going to know about it ahead of time if it's in your immediate area, because you're going to get notice paid for by the developer, and they have to do that as part of the application process. So you're going to know about it, and you're going to know about the schedule. We're also going to partner more with the county, because right now, our city really wasn't engaged with the county and what they're doing, and we just can no longer use that as an excuse to not know what's going on. They're right here. We can talk to them. We met with, a commissioner today. We have to engage with them and make this all a collaborative effort, because again, all we had to do was establish what the number one concern of our citizens was, and it's all easy after that. We know what we have to do, and the communication will come in many different ways, but it will be brought up to the 21st century level. And we really, just like this meeting, I think we posted it, I don't know when, but I feel like it's going to be a much better process for you getting the word ahead of time, but we're also open to hearing from you. We want to hear from you to see what else we can do. But the developer mailing out that, that's a very easy step. It'll be a requirement. And you shouldn't have to round up your whole neighborhood to come to a meeting and fight and stand up and wait for your 3 minutes to discuss your issue. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Jim McMicking. First of all, I want to thank you very much for your efforts. You inherited this mess. And I think I speak for many of us when I have a concern that what is already in process, what's already been approved, what's in the works, could have severe impacts on the community before any of these updates can go into play. Could we wind up ruining our culture here in Fairhope just because of what's already been approved?
Well, as far as what's been approved before, that really boils down to a legal matter, because once you have approval, you gain entitlements or development rights. Whether we like that or not, those are granted, and unless something changes, the site plan expires or something like that, we're somewhat having to live with that. And we heard some comments this afternoon at a meeting where that came up. There was additional developments that have been approved, and from the planning side of things, you have to honor that, and unless some changes are made, any kind of changes will have to come back before the city again, or if there's some expirations on the development. Those are all things that we'll monitor, of course, but a lot of the things that's been approved, it's really difficult to go back and unwind that. And in most cases, we won't be able to do that. We can make sure that what's been approved is followed and done according to what their plans showed, and we'll follow through that and make sure that happens.
Developers are going to be made accountable. We have fees in place right now. If things are not done or if they're changed without notice, I mean, there are things in place right now, and we will absolutely hold their feet to the fire because it is the already established neighborhoods that we have to protect. But we are blessed to live in the rainiest city in the world. I say it because we're across the street across the bay from Mobile, but it's a blessing and it's a curse, but I want us to look at it as a blessing, knowing that we do have the right things in place now to really plan for that type of growth. I mean, we have to engage neighborhoods that were maybe developed before these standards. Because, I mean, we really started taking our watersheds, wetlands, stormwater very seriously fairly recently. So there are established neighborhoods that can't say, what are you going to do about me? And I'm one of them. We have to come together and know that we're in it together and we're all going to be a part of fixing the problem. If you are in a development that's old and you're in the middle of wetlands, I mean, you can't build there anymore, but you might have a house on that. We want to help in that process with the county to figure out ways that even if there was no more development, those neighborhoods are going to suffer. So we already know those things can potentially get worse. We want, but also know, when I say collaboratively, there is no other way to do it. If people try to do something just for their house, or maybe for their house and a neighbor, not only do I think we'll fix a problem, but if that becomes or exasperates something for another neighbor, that is your liability. So it has to be done with us working together. And the city obviously wants to be a big part of that. Yes, Alan? Oh, you know what? I don't.
Tony Pritchett from Trentino. I'd like to ask the mayor and the city, when they're looking at these applications, to consider two things. We have the issue out at Montrose with the development that's been going through the committee there. And there's an area for the environment that's an easement that's put in that, in this case, it's being requested that it's handed by the homeowners association, which really is not acceptable, to the residents of the city. So what I'd like to suggest that the city figure out, when there are easements for environmental purposes given, and that land is to go into a trust or whatever, that the city figure out which trust they're going to approve before they go to the thing, rather than after. Here we have a situation where the developer says, well, we're going to sign it over in trust to the homeowners association. Well, we know what can happen down the road on that. So that's the first consideration. Then the second consideration was an issue we had with the Publix development, where the developer paid for a road traffic survey to be performed. So I would like to suggest to the city that in that case, that the developer pays for the road survey, but the city arranged to have it done.
We're doing that.
Okay.
I mean, you wanted to answer that first.
Sure.
And then
So those were the two concerns that I would
very
like
good.
to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The question about the Montrose development, we have a development that's going forward, and the developer is going to give up land in lieu of smaller lots. And the question is, who's going to hold title to that land? Will it be a conservation easement that someone will hold like Weeks Bay, or will it be given to the homeowner association to maintain? There's arguments on both sides of that issue. I think we have an upcoming meeting in the next several days to meet with the developer to discuss that issue as far as the conservation easement, so that should be something we'll be addressing shortly. As far as the traffic studies, we do require a traffic study, and we are evaluating the city choosing someone to do the traffic study, and also the city has had one done about a year ago where they evaluated all the roads, or most of the roads in the city, most of the large roads in the city, and so we are working to put something in place to where the traffic studies are evaluated based on that initial study for the whole city and the road capacities and so forth. So we are working on that. Traffic studies are required, but we need to make sure that we are actually looking at what the results are and that they are being implemented and evaluated based on the current road conditions we have now, based on the capacity, based on the traffic we have now. And so that's definitely something we're moving forward with. And so that will be addressed as well. That's something that we can...
And this engineering group too, I mean, this is their specialty. And if you have a consistent engineering group doing the traffic studies that will be paid for by the developer, it's consistent. They already know our biggest issues. And we're no longer going to require studies to be done and then not make a decision one way or the other because the study was done. I mean, these studies are going to be required because decisions will be made because of those studies. And you know, that is another source of frustration I think a lot of people have had. So I think that'll... Hello?
Yes, good evening. My name is Johnny Chaney. And sound like to me, you know, this replanning and everything is going to cost a little more. And I'm sort of here to basically speak for the people in the lower area, the poor folks. You know, I'm listening and I'm hearing that, okay, if someone moved next to somebody that's been there maybe a long time and is not able to build a house up to the same level as somebody that's coming from upstate with a lot of money and build a mansion there, then they're not going to be able to upgrade their home. Can you clarify?
If somebody builds a mansion next to a shack, you'll benefit. I'm just kidding. I mean, I don't want that either. But that would be one thing. It would increase possibly your property value. But I mean, anyway, we are, of course, talking about the community. I mean, there's part of it that's inside the city limits and part of it that's outside, and we want to address both of those issues. And we have, you know, been communicating with. One of the biggest things we're going to do as a part of the process and plan is start engaging in the neighborhoods that are outside the city limits. They're ready for the conversation, and a lot, I mean, because we've had so much growth and a lot of it's happening outside the city, these are the people that didn't even know there was such a problem to begin with. So, I mean, a lot of them came to vote, just so you know, and they're like, oh, you can't vote. So we are at that stage where it is no longer about, I have a parcel of land and I just want to be able to develop the way it wants and I don't want to be in the city. I think we are at a level where people care more about what their neighbor's going to do. And they know that their life's investment might be where they live, their house, and they want their surrounding neighborhood to grow so it sustains their property value or even increases it. So it has to happen first, and I wish I brought the map, but and I will next town hall meeting, and I'll try to post it tonight too, but when you look at Fairhope and you look at the area that's inside the city limits, some of you have seen it, it's interesting. But there's about 2/3 of the area that's outside the city limits. And that's a problem because most of it is unzoned. And we are, again, working on the tools that we've always had in our toolbox to figure out solutions. You know, I don't want to get in too much detail because a lot of it we have to get with an attorney and make sure that we're doing it correctly, but that is going to be one of the most important parts of this moratorium in the next year, is just making sure that the people who live inside the city limits that are basically funding the whole operation of our city, they're going to be protected.
One more question.
Yes.
Do you have an open door policy? Because
Yes,
I
I
need to
do.
come in and talk with you.
Well, I have a card that says, my door's always open, but there is a lock.
Get that one before
When
we
you
leave.
go into the city hall, and I'm like, can y'all take that door down anyway? We're actually getting ready to kind of reformat the front entrance area. We want to bring the planning department into an area that the citizens walk in all the time. I mean, it is a very busy lobby area, and that's where we want that planning studio to be, because whether or not you're building something or not, we want to be engaged and communicating with the citizens every day. I do want my door open, but according to the people that are doing a lot of work on buildings and stuff, that's not a priority, but that is on my list. I ask them to do that, because to me, it doesn't match Fairhope. I visited a lot of mayors, you know, through when the transition, and with the exception of Gulf Shores, and it's a very transient area, every mayor was just, you walk in and there's a door and you can go into it, and so I want that too.
Mayor, if I could also address Mr. Cheney's question about the incompatible land uses he was referring to. One thing that's very important to note is that there's a lot of areas that are inside the corporate limits which have zoning authority, which gives us the ability to review those to make sure it's meeting the zoning standards. But there's also a lot of areas that are outside the corporate limits where it's in the county and there's no zoning. And so in those areas that may be abutting the corporate limits, but there's no zoning, there is without the zoning authority to determine what use goes there, be it single family or commercial, the city is precluded from dictating what kind of use goes there. So that's very important to note. I know that in my time when I worked for Baldwin County, that came up a lot. Without that zoning authority, you really had a difficult, or you really didn't have any authority to regulate the use, be it commercial, industrial, what have you. So it's very important to note that in some cases, you may have incompatible land uses, but if it's in the county, then our tools we have in our toolbox is very, very limited, and it's the same with the county as well. So it's important to note, you know, just make sure that you're aware of that, and you know,
We're bringing out that toolbox.
Right.
Everybody says, oh, there's nothing we can do. I promise you. That's what we're working on.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah, Baldwin County is a statement. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the southeast United States, as you know. So if you guys, it's a
In the
fact.
country.
In the country, in the United
And
States.
Fairhope is the
Yes.
fastest growing city in the fastest growing county in the
Yeah.
state of Alabama.
Yeah, so Baldwin, yeah, in the whole, I thought it was just the southeast United States, but it's the whole United States,
It's
Baldwin
ranked,
County.
it's not
Yeah.
the number one, but it's ranked
Yeah,
nationally,
yeah.
yes.
So, and then regarding what the gentleman was talking about, I've been blessed. It'll be 3 years since I've been living in Fairhope in March. Just bought a house in August. Thank you, Jesus.
Congratulations.
I would live in a tree house in Fairhope. I
Love
love it
it.
here. So any place you live in Fairhope, God himself lives here. But I live off a street off of Ingleside, which is at Main. Okay, so on Michigan, the speed limit of 25 miles an hour, I think, needs to be reduced. I've been guilty of driving faster than that going to work. But I really, you know, people live off of Ingleside. I think certain streets like Fairhope Avenue, Morphy, Nichols, people live there. And I think the speed limits need to be reduced just because people are going so fast. So maybe 15, 20 versus 25.
I don't know the speed limit would stop
So
that.
it's 25 miles an hour on
Chief-
either side. People are flying
Chief-
on, oh, did I just say?
This is what I think.
Did I go
You
faster
just
than
put them
I-
out there for a day. All you have to do is just hand out a couple of tickets, and it'll solve it for at least a few months. But,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Thank you. But I'm sorry, I didn't say that I
I don't
drive
think the
faster
speed
than
limit sign would help that.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
Because in the morning, it's dangerous. And I even saw a sign on Ingleside that said, please slow down. You would slow down if your children lived here.
Right.
So, and there's,
If they're driving too fast, they can't read that.
yeah. And there's a cat lady with all the cats. Don't want the cats to get hit, but.
Alan he's been trying to get up here for a long time, so.
Ron Allen. I do not live in the city limits of Fairhope, but I did.
We cannot hear.
All right. Can you hear me now? Okay. My question is, you've got X number of projects have been approved. You got an X number of applications that have been filed and are complete. You said we got enough for 4 years.
I mean, that's what I've been told.
Yeah. Can you list in the paper, both the Fairhope paper and the Mobile paper, what these projects are? The ones that have been approved, the applications have been filed, so we can have an idea of what's going to go on in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And your moratorium is.
And I want to mention too that, another problem is that it could have been approved 10 years ago. That also will no longer happen because there has to be a deadline. Things change in 10 years, especially 20 years. So that will happen, but I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, and the mayor's right. There's a lot of developments that have a long timeline with them. They're approved in multiple phases. They get a master plan approval or a PUD approval, and they move forward at different stages. So a lot of these, I think I saw one recently that was a 10-year project, and that's not uncommon in the planning world. So they do have to go to fulfillment in the end, and we're bound to have to review those to make sure that they are being done in accordance with the PUD. But there's a lot of long-term projects. I will tell you the moratorium only applies to major subdivisions and the multiple occupancy permits. That does not apply to site plans. So you will see site plans still going through the process. Site plans are for those inside the corporate limits, and so there is still activity that's still ongoing. But the major subdivisions and also the MOP projects are under the moratorium, and those are being held until sometime after the moratorium.
Hi, good to see you back. My name's Linda Barnett, and I live in Quail Creek on the back street of Covey Drive. That's the entrance, the back entrance off Lawrence Road. 4 or 5 years ago, they did a study, and we had over 750 cars that went up and down that street at that time. We did not have young children. When I say young children that are on bicycles, riding scooters and all that, we now have that. So what's happening is people are coming from Foley and they're cutting through there rather than go all the way up to Lawrence and Fairhope Avenue because there's no light there, so they have to sit with that being across there. But Covey Drive has a curve in it, and just the other day, one of the children barely missed getting hit on the scooter, especially during the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning and 3 to 5 in the afternoon. That's school time, and that's time that people are getting off. I would like to see if we could get a new traffic study done to see if we can have just one speed bump. Because I'm telling you, this is going to happen. But we've got now 5 children under the age of 10 on that street. We're very concerned. When my grandchildren were small, I never let them get outside without me sitting out there with them. And I'm that person that sits in the front yard and does this when people ride by. But it's becoming a critical situation.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I see the chief taking notes, so thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for everything you're doing. You mentioned earlier notices go to adjacent landowners, and you didn't really go into a lot of detail about where you're going in the future. But we experienced a situation in another state where they did that for planning of a new shooting range, and they notified the 5 or 6 adjacent property owners and not the 8 or 9 huge subdivisions around them. Mm-hmm. And so there was a tremendous outcry. And it relates to me in that we live on Cowpen Creek, and we're having some runoff problems from upstream developments.
And so I'm not an adjacent landowner, but I'm going to be impacted by the runoff that's coming. So I don't know how you do that.
Well, for a subdivision, the law requires to notify the adjoining property owners. For a zoning site plan or rezoning, we notify 300 feet around the subject property. So, and also, there's also an ad placed in the paper. It's ran, I think, twice in the paper. And so the notice is usually, again, by mail and in the paper. So if you watch the legal section of the newspaper, it should be in there.
And this is the Fairhope newspaper?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing, I know that projects are required to put a catch basin in. I don't know the requirements, but I know it catches a certain amount of rain or inches or time period, right?
Right.
And our concern is if you've got 5 or 6 neighborhoods upstream and we have the rainiest city in the world, in the country, when that exceeds, now we get 100% of everything because they're not designed but to catch that first amount of rain. So again, we're being impacted downstream. We might be a mile away, but we're still seeing a huge impact from this runoff. And so that's the kind of things that I want to make sure and ask about.
And the mayor and I had a meeting this afternoon with some concerned citizens and the county and city staff. I mean, technically speaking, when you develop a piece of property, the standards are you cannot produce any more water that leaves the site than it was pre-development. So post-development cannot exceed that of pre-development property. We all know sometimes that's not the case, so that's one of the things we're also looking at to ensure that our regulations we have in place for stormwater does protect downstream landowners. Now, obviously, we have some rains here that are extraordinary events. Those are really hard to design for. If you did that, we'd have nothing.
Every 4-inch rain.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Well, I mean, like 2014, we had some extraordinary floods, and those are hard to design for. If you did, you'd have concrete structures going all through the city, which are not very aesthetically pleasing. But we are looking at those. That's part of our review with this moratorium, is trying to put something in place that we feel confident will address the stormwater needs we have.
I'm really happy to be here tonight. I've been here 11 or 12 years. I love my town. I love my mayor. I'm working on loving my city council. I want you to know that I was so deeply moved by Johnny Chaney's remarks. I feel like I would like to address not the zoning that we're discussing, but the zoning of the human heart and soul of our town. This town must open and embrace all of its citizens. All of its citizens. There cannot be a line of demarcation where some are acceptable and some are not. I plead with my mayor, my city council, the people of this town, the churches, the groups, to open our hearts to all of our people. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, I really don't want to follow that with something this dry, but I've got a couple of questions and a couple of parts. I'm going to ask it and sit down. Can you clarify the moratorium? How far out? Is it just corporate? Does it extend to the planning area? Can you clarify that a little bit more? And then my other question is, I understand these projects that are in place, that are ongoing, as you said, for 4 more years, there's not a whole lot the city can do legally by the statutes that are in place. And you probably are not going to be able to answer this, but as concerned citizens, other than coming to these meetings and addressing the city, which doesn't have a lot of tools in your toolbox to address what's already going on, should we be contacting ADEM? That's the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. I know there are lawsuits going on. That's not in the financial picture for every neighborhood. Mobile Baykeepers. Are there other avenues we can take where someone might be able to look at some of these developers and get them to take a bigger look at the bigger picture for our whole community? And that's what I had to say.
I will say that the things that we have in place are good. They might not have been enforced every time, exceptions being made. That will no longer happen. And part of the stormwater comprehensive plan and putting things in place, like Wayne said before, you know, we can't put things in place the same for every development. And again, working with our established communities right now is also a part of that process. But, I mean, you can catch up, but that is the main thing we're going to do. From here on out, stormwater is really one of the biggest issues, because I don't care where you live. And I said this at the last meeting. There's my granny. Hey, Granny. Betty Jo Wolf. She built the family house in 1950 on Pier Street. It is at the top of the hill. I mean, I think we're 100 feet up, and we flood now. I mean, I actually did sell the house last year. I'm kind of heartbroken, but I live above Page and Pallet now, so it's the only place I would ever live. I mean, move from Pier, but saying that, everybody in every established neighborhood has stormwater runoff. So that's just something we're going to have to really, again, we have to work together because we are all in this together. People say, you know, even with Fly Creek development, oh, that's not near me. But the smart ones know it is going to affect you. You know what I mean? Everything affects us. I kept on saying we're all in this together. That's how we have to address problems. We have to do it together.
And Mayor, if I could address a couple of the questions that she asked. The first one about the extent of the moratorium, it goes out into the planning jurisdiction. The planning jurisdiction goes 5 miles out into the county for Fairhope, but I think it ends at Fish River and it goes down south, down County Road 1 and up almost to near Daphne's border there. So it does extend quite a ways, and it does apply to, again, major subdivisions and also multiple occupancy projects, and that's what it applies to in that area as well as inside the corporate
up to
limits.
4.
Right.
4 units.
That's right. As far as ADEM, and when you see a project ongoing, obviously if you see something that's a concern, we have a code enforcement staff with the city. I would encourage you to contact the city. Obviously, you can contact ADEM if that's appropriate as well. But we want to make sure that things are done in the manner that by following the city ordinances and by following the plans that were approved by the city. It's been my experience in most cases that the developer wants to comply. It costs money and time when you don't, and many times it may be an oversight or maybe a contractor that didn't understand what needed to be done. But I know that we will address it quickly. I know we've had several issues we're working on in the Point Clear area where we got involved. ADM was involved with that, but we do have a staff that can go out there and look at it and make sure that BMPs are in place for runoff and sedimentation and things like that. But so certainly call us. We will definitely come out, look at it, and
But what I wanted to mention too, when she was talking up here, we don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to go and have another fight, go to another meeting. Let's round up the troops. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was sick of that. Just know that we're going to put the right things in place. Again, it's a process. That shouldn't be your job to do that. We have to have the right leaders in place to do that for you. And again, make you a part of the conversation, not put it on an agenda. You may or may not find out about it. I mean, it's all about communicating on the front end, and know that as a citizen, I don't know that there has been anybody more frustrated than me over the last almost 20 years with bringing in things and allowing things and not planning that will ultimately turn us into Anytown, USA. I love Fairhope. I love everything about it. I don't want to be anywhere else. And just like I was at 20, my kids absolutely want to leave. I'm not coming back. And I said the same. But I want this to have the same opportunity that I had, and we want to continue that. Because I know everybody here, and I've said it time and time again, you're here for a reason. I don't think anybody's stuck here. We are going to want, and what's happening I see all the time is someone moves to Fairhope, and then one by, their parents move, their daughter moves. We want that because we want to babysit our grandchildren while your daughter or son goes to the movies and out to dinner. We don't want to visit them in Atlanta and Houston and all of these places. So, well, I don't. But to me, I just think that's what everybody wants. We want to have the town we have now. So I've definitely felt all of these things with you.
If I can mention one thing, we've had a lot of questions about notification of developments and what's going on. I want to mention one thing we're also working on is an internet-based, through the city's website, a map viewer that shows, you're able to search the zoning of property, but also we will have the developments that are ongoing on that map viewer with an icon. You can click on it, you can get the information about the development, the site plan. That's something that's in the works. We're working with a vendor now to get that done. And so that will be another method of being notified of what's going on around you. And so we're excited about that. It will also give more information at your fingertips 24/7.
And you can come into the design studio and see it also. So you don't have to rely on your own computer or how to figure that out. It's going to be accessible to you to come and talk to us.
And you may not be able to answer this. You may not be able to answer this right now, but in case of a storm, I lived through Frederick, and we weren't this big, and we're steadily growing. And I want to know, what does the city have in plan for that? And you can't answer it now, maybe, but
There's definitely a plan, and we're actually updating it as well. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but anyway, we have.
Right. Yeah. The city does have an emergency operations plan. There are plans in place for emergencies like that. I know one of the concerns is flooding. When you have a storm, roads get cut off, those kind of things. And I think that's something from the planning standpoint. That's also part of planning. Also, is making sure that you're planning for those events like hurricanes and storms to ensure that there may be secondary egress and from property and things like that. So that's definitely something that's in the works.
my name is Charlene Jenkins, and I live on Ingleside, and we flood.
Mm-hmm.
And
When,
Right.
I've talked to you before.
yes.
Thank
So
you.
don't leave. I've got to get your information again.
I just had one thing. I'm going totally off topic here. This week's Lanyap, great article. Love what you're doing there, exposing all of this corruption. I want to know, I think you guys need to research who appointed Ray Hicks to the Airport Authority Board in 2015. Who appointed Ray Hicks to the Airport Authority Board in 2015? And then within about 1.5 years later, he's awarded a new hangar contract. That's a conflict of interest right there. I don't care what the Alabama Ethics Board said. That's an ethics violation. And he owns Mid-Bay Air LLC, which is building one of the hangars. You got to be kidding me. It's all right here in this week's Lanyap. What's going on with the Fairhope Airport Authority? Please get to the bottom of this. I love that you're exposing it.
And you know what? It's not even in my hands. There's people that take care of that, and I'm gonna let them do that. Right. I just think it's more about right now, and thank gosh we are looking to the future, and that's what we cannot continue to get distracted by the negativity that's happening in our town right now. I have to stay positive, and I have to look to the future, and always, again, if your number one concern is how we grow and protecting that, I'm not going to take my eye off of that. And that's, again, why we're here tonight, and you will be a part of that.
I think you were next, right? Okay.
I'm Annie Barton. I live right outside the city. Okay, sorry. Mandy Barton. My question is going to be about those plans, the developments that have already been approved. First question is general, second is very specific. First question is am I correct in understanding that if changes are made to the plans they're required to be made, that they have to be resubmitted back to the Planning Commission? Is that understanding correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are minor changes you can make, but anything substantial would have to come back to the process.
Okay. Now the specific question. The development Old Battles Place had to make changes due to stormwater. Why did it not have to be resubmitted back to the Planning Commission for approval?
And this afternoon, we just talked about that, and we're looking at that and researching that now.
And where can we go to find the answer when you find the answer?
I'll post it to the city Facebook, and we'll make notice. But also know that, and I almost forgot what I was going to say about that. It was something important to that. The site plan. What we came out of that meeting understanding, because there were engineers there, and the most important thing we have to do with that project is complete it, because only then will the stormwater issue be resolved. So we've actually shut it down many times. I mean, we're going by the book.
But changes are being required.
Right,
And it's not
and
going to be
that part
resubmitted
we're doing. Wayne just started, so that site plan he did not see the change. So we're looking into that as of today. When we found out, we left that meeting to come here. Right. So, but no, I did want to mention that to you that oftentimes we're like, how can we, it's going to happen, but what we have to work on right now is making sure that things are in place to get the development done.
The problem now is the site's an open site, and it's not completed yet. Once you have the curb and guttering and the grass planted and things like that, the drainage system will work as it was designed to do. Right now, it's just an open area that's got dirt and so forth that's open, and it's running off to wherever it's going. Once it's put in place, and all the stormwater culverts and ditches are put in place, it will solve part of the problem with the water coming off that's turbid, which means it's got sediment in it.
But how do you know it will solve all of it?
Right. Well, I mean, when they build it according to the design, the engineer designed it for, it will be better than what you have right now, and that's what we were talking about today with the in our meeting this afternoon.
And the developer has made a promise based on some of the studies beforehand and afterwards that he would take care of that. So we are engaging him. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have to call time.
Yes, I mean,
So if you still have questions, you can email.
I'm sticking around.
And the mayor's sticking around for a little bit, and Wayne might stick around for a few minutes too. But you can email townhall@fairhopeal.gov with questions, and we'll take those questions and respond. Thank you.